I am Spike. I already said I'm Spike Cohen. I'm Spike Cohen, and this is, of course, Spike Cohen's Culture of Winning, featuring me, Spike Cohen. I just realized Spike Cohen's on this a lot. There's like Spike Cohen is on this 5 times. But thank you so much for joining us. For those who don't know, this is, by the way, our 18th episode of Culture of Winning. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For those who don't know, Culture of Winning is a show where I talk with elected libertarians across the country, where we talk about what got them wanting to run for office as a libertarian, how they won their race, the lessons that they learned along the way, and then building a blueprint for how libertarians can get elected in races up and down the ballot across the country. And with that in mind, and with no further ado, I would like to introduce my next guest who was successfly elected, actually re-elected. He was just re-elected for another term. Last week he was re-elected to the Bethany, Oklahoma City Council. I'm almost 100% certain that's what it is, and I'm going to make sure just right now. But so without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Americans, please join me in welcoming my next guest, newly re-elected Bethany, Oklahoma City Councilman Chris Powell. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
good. Chris, thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. And hey, congratulations on your re-election.
Thank you. We got 76%, and I'm really pleased with that.
Wow. So you didn't just win; you completely guerrilla stomped the competition. Like there was no 76%.
Yes, sir. I was very pleased with the results. We did our get out the vote efforts and had some volunteers helping with that. Did some mail, and it all worked out pretty well.
It sounds like 76% is working out pretty darn well, and we'll talk more about the specifics of how you were able to do that. But wow. So just to get started, let's talk about what even got you here in the first place. What is it that brought you to libertarianism and the Libertarian Party? Was it an aha moment, or sort of a gradual evolution over time? Every libertarian has their genesis story. Tell us the Chris Powell story.
Well, I blame my wife a lot. I was raised, my dad was a Goldwater Republican, and I was raised with a lot of limited government ideas. And this was back in the late 90s. I was one of those people who would see things on the news or read it in the paper and gripe about how it was all being done wrong and the ideas that the establishment had were terrible. And my wife got tired of hearing that. And she said, well, if you really feel that strongly about it, you need to get involved. So I went to a Young Republicans meeting, and I got involved with those people for a little bit. But I pretty quickly figured out that most of them didn't care about smaller government, and they really weren't my people. Right. So then I was at loose ends, and I came across the campaign of the 2000 presidential campaign of Harry Brown. And that really resonated with me. There were a couple of things that it took me a little bit to wrap my head around, like the opposition to drug prohibition I had to think through that a little bit, but then I found out that there were people like Howard Woolridge and Milton Friedman, and even people like William F. Buckley Jr., who thought that drug prohibition was a bad idea. And I learned about the economics of it, and I've been here ever since. So libertarian is what I am and what I'll always be.
Well, we're glad to have you, and you are incredibly, you're not only are we glad to have you, we're glad that you're running for office, because you have, like I said, I think guerrilla stomp is the actual technical term for that wide of a margin on your other opponent. Now, just out of curiosity, was that like a 2-way race or a 3-way race, or how did that work?
That was a 2-candidate race, and I do have to say that the other person that was running, really did not do a great deal, and that makes it easier. When I was initially elected, which was a special election in November of 2019, there was a 3-candidate race, and we got that one with 63%.
Okay. So okay. Well, I mean, listen, that's still very, very good that you're doing that. What made you decide to run for this city council race? I know you had run before for governor. In fact, you were the Libertarian Party of Oklahoma's first candidate for governor. Is that correct?
Yes, but the libertarian idea of putting things, putting what government we're going to have within reach of the people that are being governed. Well, nothing's closer than city council, and nothing affects your daily life as much as what your city council, what your municipal government does. To me, I would like to see a world where we have all kinds of competition and candidates running for city council, and nobody cares about the presidential race.
Right.
We've got flipped.
Well, that's how it should be, really. I mean, if you think about it, it's the most important things that happen on a day-to-day basis should be decided locally. Because if I live in Bethany, it is way easier for me to get in touch with you and share my concerns and grievances and hopes and dreams and ideas with you at a city council meeting, or, in some places, if it's a small enough town, meeting you at a local hangout, or maybe knowing you personally, than to try to get in touch with Joe Biden, or before him, Donald Trump, behind a literal army of people protecting them from the public, or even at the state level, trying to get in touch with your governor. It's always better and more responsive and more decentralized and more efficient to have as many things at the local level as possible. And it allows us to not also feel like, people that live thousands of miles away from us are making life-changing decisions with their votes that are going to affect our day-to-day lives. So no, I agree 100%. So, you ran for governor, and obviously you didn't win that. What were the things that you kind of took from that race to this race? Was there anything where you took from that and kind of retooled based on your what worked and what didn't work there, retooled that for your city council race?
Well, the Libertarian Party here in Oklahoma, we got ballot access thanks to some legal changes that made it easier for us to get on the ballot and then stay on the ballot in 2016, which we had not been on the ballot since 2000. So in 2016, I ran for county clerk. That was a partisan race countywide. And my dog just wandered in. I'm sorry.
It's fine. Don't worry about
it. I got 89,000 votes in Oklahoma County, which is Oklahoma's most populous county, compared to 83,000 statewide for Gary Johnson. So I beat Gary in 2016. Wow. But that was pretty much me on my own. I saw an opportunity to get a two-way race, and I took it. But then to run for governor, you can't just do that on your own. So I got some other people to help me. I built a team to do that. And then after that was completed, and I got 3.44%, which it was a down year, but of all the Libertarian candidates for governor nationwide, we got the highest percentage here in Oklahoma. So we did some things right. But, with all of that experience and all that contact, all those contacts and all of those things, we were ready to do our fundraising, and we had our team ready to go for this city council race. And these things, it's never one person. It takes a team. It takes, other people who are willing to come out and help and volunteer. It takes other people who have expertise about different ways of campaigning and helping you strategize. It's not, my name gets put on everything, but it's not just me. And it's also, the voters are part of that. And you've got to go out and communicate your ideas to them and sell them on what you're trying to do. And if you don't bring everybody together, it becomes real hard to win.
Right, of course. Now, what would you say was, like, if you had to pick one single thing of your, and it sounds like this re-election run was kind of a lot of easier because you're obviously already an incumbent, and you enjoy the incumbency, and instead of saying in theory what you could do, you can now talk about what you're doing. But maybe not, but in either your initial run for city council that you won, or your subsequent run this year, what would you say, of any of those, has been the most challenging part of running for office?
The most challenging part of city council is, it's really just sticking to it and, making your plan, coming up with your strategy, and then following through on the way to do it, which I really like getting out on the doors and talking to people. So I don't know how people who don't like to do that can be successful in this. If you don't like
Right.
talking to people, I don't know what you're doing. But so that part was easy for me. But when you do it day after day, week after week, and you're out there every day when your family is at home, wondering what you're doing and things like that, it can really wear on you. And I've seen a lot of other people who have thought that they would like to run for office and then, didn't want to do that part with as much discipline and dedication as you really need to do. If you're going to win, you've got to communicate to your voters.
Yeah, yeah, you have to. So, and this is a common thing that we keep hearing. Part of this show is working on building a blueprint, and part of building a blueprint is looking for the patterns that are leading to success. And what I hear over and over and over again is there is no real substitute for the hard work. Every once in a while, I have a guest who comes on, and their strategy was to run for something no one else was running for, and keep a really low profile so no one else would run for it. It's like this stealth ninja way of running. Short of that, anyone who's running for something like this, where they know there's going to be competition, they're going to have to fight hard and all of that stuff. In fact, Eric in the comments says you can't campaign without campaigning. There's no substitute. That's actually perfect, Eric. There is no substitute for doing the hard work, the door knocking, the sign waving, the advertising, the interviews and everything else, and making yourself available. Now, did you do a lot of like retail politicking, like door knocking and events and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, again, it's something that I really enjoy, and it's the key component of every campaign that I've run. When we had the gubernatorial race, we had a primary. In fact, if you watch the Tiger King docuseries,
Yes.
you saw just a snippet or two of that. But he was in that primary along with myself and another fellow named Rex Lawhorn. Well, Rex went around and did meet and greets all over the state. We had a closed primary, so only libertarians could vote in it. I went and I knocked on the doors of a couple of thousand doors of registered libertarians in the state of Oklahoma. And Rex and we left Joe Exotic in the dust because he didn't do those things. So he had the name recognition, he got all the attention, but he didn't get the votes because he didn't do the campaigning.
He wasn't doing the hard work of actually campaigning and treating it like a retail race like it should be. So then you weren't also handing out like branded thongs and stuff like that like he was. You were just doing the old school way of running.
No, I'm not sure that there really was much of a market for his products of that type. I know there's no market for products with my brand on them.
No, Chris Powell branded what was it, like condoms and stuff like that. It was weird how he did, and he did the job of getting attention from the media, but that mean, like you said, that means absolutely nothing if you're not connecting with actual voters. And in fact, if all you're doing is grandstanding, then the voters might say, I don't think you actually are taking this seriously, and you obviously were. So congratulations on that. In fact, we have some people in the comments, Kenneth Blevins and a few others, who said that they voted for you for governor. So you've got some fans and supporters here. So I mean, this is what we hear over and over again: the kind of hard work that has to be done on the ground to be able to win these types of races. Out of curiosity, how many households? And I don't need an exact number, but just sort of a ballpark figure. How many households are in the Bethany city proper?
We've got a population of just under 20,000, and okay, we have 4 wards. So my ward is, roughly 5,000 people. And we had a total number of votes last Tuesday of 321 votes. So, that gives you an idea of how much participation we had. That's actually an increase, the third increase in a row in turnout in this ward. So, that speaks to getting out and doing that the retail politics of communicating to people and getting them interested. And that's how you increase your turnout and increase your interest in what your municipal government is doing.
Especially in a low turnout race, you get a few hundred people to show up and you walk away with the race like you just did. It's incredible. It is, this is why I did this show. I talk to folks like you who do the groundwork and end up walking away with their wins or winning hard fought wins that no one thought they were going to get. And the reason they defied expectations is because they did that hard work. They were involved in their communities. They went out into their communities and talked to them. We already know we have the best ideas. We just have to get them in front of people. And it's not enough to just do TV and radio interviews, although that's important. It's not enough to, have signs out, although that's also important. It's not enough to just do social media advertising and posts and stuff like that, although that's also important. Especially on a local race, not for the best of reasons, but a lot of voters care less about the policies of the people that are running locally and more about whether they've ever heard of you, whether they think that you care about them at all, whether you've demonstrated that you're the least bit involved in the community, which it's important to know those things, but your actual policies and goals take a far back seat to, have I ever heard of this person? Why do I think they care about the community? And maybe that's the right way to look at it. But, especially in a low turnout race, getting out there and letting people know what's going on, that is where it's at. So let me ask you this. What are the, if I, for the people that are watching this, that are thinking of running in the future, or thinking of being involved in a campaign in the future, or just, want to know how to be able to do this successfully, what would you say are the top one or two biggest lessons that you learned in all of your campaigning for governor, for city council? What would you say are like the top lessons that you learned that you would want to share with anyone who's thinking of running?
Well, you said something about that we have the best ideas, and we do. And you're absolutely correct that we've had the best ideas for 50 years, right. And that alone doesn't cut it. We've got to be more professional and get better at the basic techniques of campaigning, which, a lot of that is just communicating with your voters. If you can't get your message out, if they don't know you're running, they're not going to vote for you because they didn't hear about you before they saw your name on the ballot. So, really, learning the techniques of how do you find out who your voters are, and then how do you communicate what it is that you're about and what it is that you want to do as their elected representative are the things that I would tell anybody that are really those are the nuts and bolts of it. And we can talk about how exactly you do that. There's a lot of people, a lot of libertarians across the country who have won races and can tell you a little bit about that. But getting focused on that aspect of it, of communicating to your voters and letting them know that you're the person that they need to vote for. Because just like what you said, if they don't know who you are, if they don't see your name until they see it on the ballot, if that's the first time, they don't know that you care about them. They don't know what your ideas are. They don't know anything. And they're going to check the name of somebody that they know something about, even perhaps if they don't like that person, if that other person made the effort to contact them, they'll choose that one.
Yep. It's a phrase I use that I wish I had come up with, but someone probably came up with it before I was even born. No one cares what you know until they know that you care. And no one, and for that, and I add, no one knows that you care if they don't even know who the hell you are. Like, there's no way for them to know you care if, we say if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, did it even happen? If you run for city council and no one ever finds out, then did it even happen? And in the eyes of that voter, no, it didn't happen. And if the first time someone's seeing your name is when they're standing in a ballot box and there's a line behind them and they're just trying to, vote for their stuff and get out of there, and they look and they see a name that they recognize, maybe another name they recognize, and then Chris Powell, and they've never heard of you before, and Libertarian Party, so it's not like, well, I'm typically a Democrat or Republican voter, or was your race nonpartisan or partisan?
The city council is nonpartisan here.
Okay, so even worse. They don't even have a guidestone of Republican, Libertarian, anything. They're just looking and they see a name and they go, I don't know who this is, so I'm going to vote for this person. Like you said, even if they don't like the person, it's at least the devil that they know. You have to get in front of people. If you are watching this with an eye towards running, if the last 17 guests plus me haven't driven this point home, let this man drive this point home for you. He won with 76% of the vote. He completely, I'm sure there have been other races that people have won as libertarians. Maybe there aren't. Do you know if there's ever been a libertarian that's won by as wide a margin as you have offhand? Is anyone keeping track of that?
I don't know. It seems that there must be, but because we've had so many people run for so many offices since 1971,
right?
But I don't know of any.
I mean, other than someone running unopposed or something like that, where they get 99% of the vote with a couple write-ins or something. Maybe you're certainly up there. If anyone is thinking of running a race and trying to win, this man, again, I'm coining the term, if it's not guerrilla stomp is the term that I'm using for this wide of a victory margin, especially in a local nonpartisan race. That is incredible. You have to do the work. You have to get involved in your community now, not when you decide to run, now, and as soon as possible, preferably before now, but definitely now. You need to potentially go to city council meetings. You need to go and do door knocking. You need to do the advertising. You have to have your couple of policy. Let me ask you something. What were your main policies that you ran on? Did you pick like one or two things and really hammer away on those? Like what were your main policies that you ran on?
Well, a couple of different things. Basic infrastructure. We've had a history in Bethany of, especially some recent history of some of these big ideas. And big ideas they can cause you some real problems, waste a lot of taxpayer dollars, and really, they did, in fact, create some serious issues here. And voters wanted somebody who was going to take care of the basics. In the special election in 2019, we had a serious water issue. So, campaigning on dealing with the water issue and making sure that we were going to have good, clean water for our town and not have to buy from our neighbor, Oklahoma City, right. That was very important to people. And then another thing that is, and this goes back to the big idea thing a little bit, we've had about 25 years of different kinds of economic development programs in our city, and they never really work out, but they do cost a lot of money. And so that was something that I specifically campaigned on, that I was not interested in doing any of those things. And certainly we were not going to do any of those things if I could help it until we took care of the basic services of the streets, the water, the drainage, those kinds of things, that we do that first. And then maybe if we have some money left over, we can look at something else. But we do those basic functions first. It's really a basic good government platform.
Right. Just solid, good local governance. Yeah, it's solid, good local governance. The reason that when people say, yeah, but without taxes, who would build my roads, is because that's what they want their taxes to go to, right? Like most people that, support some form of taxation, they aren't thinking, hey, without taxes, how would we throw lots of people in cages? Or how would we, have endless wars around the world? Or how would we throw, trillions of dollars to cronies and pork projects? They're thinking about the stuff they actually need, like roads and fixing potholes and fixing infrastructure and dealing with, right now you're in the middle of a snowstorm, and so there's a concern about the electrical grid infrastructure and things like that. These are the basic common good governance things that libertarians can run on locally, on a basically saying, good stewardship. Whether you're promoting a model of privatizing those things so the market providers can provide them better, whether you're talking about keeping them in-house but just being a good steward of the money you're getting and not, flippantly spending it on other stuff, it all goes back to the same model of saying that libertarians believe that you do best when you have as much of your own money as possible and when government is not just spending like a drunken sailor on your behalf. So that's fantastic. So now that you have been elected, or actually re-elected, what are your goal? What has been your goals and the things you've been doing, and what are your goals moving forward now as a recently re-elected in a landslide? Again, I keep bringing that up, but a newly re-elected city councilman. What are your goals?
Well, we had a financial crisis that came out like the week that I took the oath of office.
Okay.
And so we cut back a lot of our different city departments. We froze hiring. We really had to cut back the budget, and we absolutely had to because of the situation that we were in. If you are in the red at the end of the fiscal year, then you risk the state coming in and running everything, and nobody wants that. Right. So one of my goals is to make sure that we keep that same attitude and approach, that fiscally responsible approach going forward, and we don't get into waste and mismanagement of funds and things of that nature, which I think that is something that every voter wants to see, is a more responsible approach than we've had for the last 4 years. One of the other candidates on the ballot last Tuesday was the mayor who had presided over a lot of the creation of a lot of the financial issues, and he lost by nearly the same margin. The challenger got 73%. So voters all over town had the same idea that we need to be more prudent with the taxpayers' money. So there's that, and there's focusing on making our city services work better. We've had some issues with utilities billing and things of that nature that have really upset a lot of people. And so we need to work out the kinks with that, and going forward, find the best solution. If that's a new system that is going to work better, but potentially that has a price tag that we might not like, or if it's simply tightening up our policies and procedures to make what we have work the way that it's supposed to work. But I'm very passionate about the fact that we need to get that done for our residents, because we have too many people who are getting too many bills that don't make sense to them, and they don't have confidence in the city because of that.
Folks, this is why he got 76%, by the way. I'm not trying to brag on him too much, but this is what got it. But listen to what he just said. And I'm sorry I'm talking about you in third person. You're right here. What you just said, perfect idea of good basic governance, right? You're presenting everyday ideas that the average voter looks and says, yes, that's exactly what I think. I'd like you mentioned the billing problems to be addressed by, I'm being, I would say robbed, but most people would say taxed. I'm being taxed to pay for all this stuff, and yet your billing system's messed up. I'm being taxed for roads, and yet we're having problems with infrastructure and basic provision of services. If I'm going to be taxed this much, I want to be able to get the services that I need. This is a perfect argument for decentralization and localization of government. You know what your city needs because you live there and you're experiencing, as a resident of that city, everything that the people there are experiencing. Now, there may be a different part of town where they're experiencing things differently, maybe a poorer part of town or something like that they have other issues to be addressed as well. But you live locally enough where you can be able to address those things because you still live in the same general area. Maybe not the exact same neighborhood, but the same general area. When you nationalize all politics, not only does that stuff get ignored because it would be impossible for someone at the top, running at the White House or even at the state house to keep track of, every single city and municipalities issues with billing and roads and everything else. Not only does most of that stuff get ignored, but when it does have attention paid to it, it's going to be dealt with in the most inefficient way possible because they're going to try to come up with a top-down solution for every single city. And so, and this is less about how to win elections and more about why we're even doing this in the first place. This is how we can win, not just win elections, but win the conversation. Because when we get enough libertarians elected at the local and statewide levels, we can then make the argument that good governance is happening at the local level because of our policies. And that not only does that mean that libertarians should be elected for higher offices, federal offices, the White House, governor's mansions, and so forth, because we've shown that we have good governance, but also because we've shown that it's best handled at the local level. And that the only way for that to happen is to get libertarians elected even higher up so that they can begin to dismantle that centralization of power and put it back in the hands of individual communities and municipalities where it rightfully belongs. So I'm just very happy that you're doing that. And let's go to the comments real quick because there were a ton of people saying that they were talking about how they voted for you. There were a few people that said they also voted for you too. Also a comment from Connor Cudmore, I think I'm pronouncing it, who says, "How do we deal?" I'd actually like to get your thoughts on this. Did you experience people saying, and I think I know the answer to this because it was a nonpartisan race, but have you ever dealt with people saying, well, I'd vote for you, but libertarians can't win? And if so, how did you approach that someone telling you that?
Well, I did have to deal with that in the gubernatorial race. And also, I ran for state legislature when I first became a libertarian back in 2000, and I dealt with it then. Mm-hmm. And, some people you're just not going to reach.
Right.
And you just have to go on to the next person that you can. But the answer is that you're not picking a winner. It's not the horse track. You're voting to tell elected officials, whoever gets elected, what it is that you want them to do. And if you reduce your choices beforehand, if you rig the game for them so that they don't know that how many people there are who want these libertarian ideas, then like I said, you've rigged the game for them so that they don't have to. They can ignore your voice now because you didn't even express it. So that's kind of the approach that I take to that question, is that voting is not just about picking the winner, it's about communicating what it is that you want the winner to do.
Right. And if you don't, and if you aren't, like you said, if you're self-limiting, if you're robbing yourself of other options, you're also not giving any feedback to those politicians other than you can do whatever you want, and I'm going to vote for you because I see you as a lesser evil or something like that. An additional answer to that, because that's your answer in that moment when you're running for something and they're saying that to you. The longer term answer to that is to win more races. Right? So that's a big part of why we're doing this. So you winning, if someone says a libertarian can't win, I can go, tell that to Chris Powell, who, again, guerrilla stomped the competition in his run for Bethany City Council. Tell that to Kalish Morrow. Tell that to Kara Schultz. Tell that to Paul Robbins Jr. Tell that to Aaron Wright. Tell that to all the people that have won their races, often winning hard-fought races across the country, as far from Florida up to New England, out to California, down to Oklahoma, all the way up to Alaska, and everywhere in between. They were able to win their races. So that's not true. Libertarians do win all the time. And the more that we win, the more that narrative goes away. But yeah, in that moment, you can't really say that. You have to address it being said to you. But I'll tell you what, man, I am so happy to have you on. Before I let you go, Chris, you've been an amazing guest. Before I let you go, I want to give you a chance to say anything that you felt like we didn't get a chance to talk about, anything that you want to plug, anything you want to promote. You have as much time as you want. Chris Powell, the floor is yours.
Well, if I could tell one thing to anyone who is thinking about running for office as a libertarian, it's that you should pick your spot, get some people to work with you, work on some other campaigns first, if that's what you need to do, and then go out and give it everything you've got. If you walk away from the race at the end of the day, no matter what the numbers are, thinking that you got every vote that was available to you, you can feel like that you really did some good. If you leave votes on the table, that can really eat at you. I've had some instances where I could have done some things differently if I had known what was going to happen,
right,
and maybe made a bigger difference sooner. So, and those things, I remember those things, and maybe nobody else thinks about that, but don't carry that stuff around. Put it all out there. Don't leave anything on the table, and do as much as you can to run a professional race geared toward communicating to your voters.
Leave it all on the court. Message to your voter, to the voters that you need to win in your city, jurisdiction, district, whatever you're running on, and I like it. Leave it all on the table. Don't leave a single chip unturned. That's how you win with over 3/4 of the vote. Again, Chris, thank you again so much for coming on, and on relatively short notice. I got really, for those, I got kind of caught off guard this past weekend with Valentine's Day and everything else, and I thought, wow, I probably need to get a guest for Culture of Winning. And then it just so happened that I saw last week that you had won re-election, and I didn't know it was 76%, but I knew it was a pretty sizable win, and I thought, well, that's how serendipitous. That's a great, perfect guess. So, Chris, again, thanks so much for coming on. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate what you're doing with this podcast. This is the message that we need to get out, that campaigns drive the bus. Campaigns are where we're going to make the change. So you and everybody else that has run for office and is thinking about running for office, be the change you want to see. And again, thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, thank you. You're a friend of the show, and I'm honored to have you as a colleague. Thank you again. Folks, thank you for tuning into this episode of Culture of Winning. Thanks so much for watching. We keep hearing it again and again, like Chris said today. You got to do the hard work. Leave it all out on the court. Don't leave any chips on the table. You can win this. Do the things that lead to being able to win, and we can get more wins across the country. I hope you join me tomorrow at Tuesday on Muddy Waters Media for the Muddy Waters of Freedom, where Matt Wright and I will parse through the week's events like the Wonder Boys that we are. And then on Wednesday, join me for an all-new episode of My Fellow Americans with me, Spike Cohen. It's my show. And then have a great weekend. In fact, if you live in anywhere near Nashville, Tennessee, come join me in Lebanon, Tennessee for the Libertarian Party of Tennessee convention on Saturday and Sunday, and come out to the gala event, or gala, however you say that, to the party on Saturday night in Lebanon, Tennessee. Go to the Libertarian Party of Tennessee Facebook page or Twitter or their website and get more information. I'd love to see you there. And then join me next week right here, same Spike place, same Spike time, for the next episode, the 19th episode of Culture of Winning. I'm Spike Cohen, and you are the power. God bless, guys.